Hello, you're listening to Count Richard von Coudenhove Kalergi. Today is Monday, the 19th of August, and here's a couple of comments since my last video. Germany, a former three-star general, Joachim Wunderach, is running for mayor of Hanover after expressing contempt for Angela Merkel's open border policy. A former member of Merkel's CDU party has accused the German leader of facilitating mass migration. He joined the ADF shortly after retiring from the Luftwaffe in 2018 and said that Merkel's party could lose the confidence of the German armed forces. He said, quote, "The ADF is the only party that fully supports the Bundeswehr, and that support for the ADF is likely to be even greater in the police, as they are in the front line, than among the soldiers," and added, "The protection of one's own border is no longer a priority goal with Germany, giving more and more sovereignty to the EU. The ECB I do not agree with." The general also said about the ADF being painted as extremists in the press, that he hadn't come across any extremists and that the party platform was in line with that of the CDU from 2003 onwards. I'm mindful of a video of Merkel stomping across the stage and grabbing the German flag off a supporter, shaking her head and throwing it on the ground. Isn't it a bit of an irony that Merkel, who was born in Hamburg, moved to East Germany as an infant and did not take part in the crowd celebrations when the wall came down, that the East German region has much more support for the ADF? Could it be that after living under the communist rule of the Soviet bloc, they are now rejecting the communist rule of the EU? In Berlin, a federal prosecutor said that they have charged 3 Iraqi refugees with planning Islamic extremist bombing. Their names weren't given in line with German policy laws, but as they have not been linked to a specific organisation, they don't face terrorism charges. They allegedly ordered a detonator from Britain, but never received it after authorities arrested their contact. After being unable to afford an illegal firearm, they decided to carry out an attack using a truck bomb, with one of them beginning to take truck lessons. In France, a 26-year-old illegal migrant was arrested in Bordeaux this week after being accused of raping a woman while working as a delivery man for Uber Eats. He is suspected of raping a 22-year-old student in Paris earlier this month. The Bangladeshi man arrived at her apartment at 3 a.m. after she ordered food on returning home from a night out. On noticing that the woman was a little unsteady on her feet, he pushed his way past in and raped the woman. He fled the area but was traced by a glove that he had left at the scene through his fingerprints. Close sources to the case claim that the man bragged to his friends about this and even took a picture of the girl. The family of the migrant were not impressed with his behaviour and worked with the police to catch him. He was caught trying to board a bus to Spain in an effort to escape French authorities. More from that canary in the coal mine, Sweden. According to the head of Swedish animal protection group, there has been an increase in animal cruelty in migrant-dense areas towards hedgehogs, cats, dogs, where youths have been spotted kicking them around like footballs, hares and swans. In some instances with videos of them having their throats cut being circulated on social media. The group is planning to visit schools in the near future, handing out information sheets to children in a language they can understand on how to handle animals, what you can do and what you cannot. If they don't integrate with people, do you really think they would be interested in animal welfare? The disregard for humanity is endemic in the third world and tough enough to see. Just look at the white farmers in South Africa and how are being murdered. The barbarity towards animals is even worse. A Syrian migrant smuggled into Sweden by a journalist working for a Swedish national broadcaster has been sentenced in court for knife crimes, receiving a conviction and a fine. Smuggled into Sweden in 2014 by a journalist on assignment in Greece across multiple countries, he was eventually caught, charged, but allowed to keep his job with the state broadcaster. And in Österbrund, police have arrested an Uzbek migrant this week on suspicion of terrorism who had previously been deported from the country. The man was in his 30s, was deported from Sweden in 2016. He had originally arrived in 2012, claiming that he required asylum after his family had been threatened because his father had prosecuted a mafia boss, and once was hailed by a local newspaper as an example of family integration into Swedish society. He eventually admitted that he had lied. He was back in the country on a temporary residency permit. He had been spotted driving erratically before being stopped by police, who discovered items such as knives and hammers in his car that led them to believe that he was preparing for a potential terrorist attack and possibly car ramming of civilians. In Austria, Muslim taxi drivers have refused to carry blind people along with their guide dogs in their taxis, despite that this violates the law, citing that Allah has branded dogs as impure. In 2 recent incidents, a booked taxi for a blind person drove away when the driver saw the dog, and a second incident was when a blind person with a dog wanted to book a taxi going to the airport from a local taxi office that they walked into. They were told that there was no guarantee of transport because most drivers would refuse to take dogs on religious grounds. The person was given the name of another taxi company. After complaining to the owners of the company, who responded, quote, "We are not the owners of the taxis but dispatchers, and we have tried to make drivers understand that these jobs have to be carried out like any other job, and at the moment we are unfortunately not able to solve this problem satisfactorily." Around 80% of all taxi drivers in Austria have a migrant background. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, another example of cultural enrichment. With a high level of free now taxis operating in Ireland are driven by foreign nationals, it would be interesting to see if a similar occurrence has happened here in Ireland, and what would the National Transport Authority's response be. And now for some domestic issues. Road, County Offaly. Farmers and landowners are in a continued dispute with Bord na Móna over €120 million wind farm development over a 29 turbine project, due to the refusal of Bord na Móna to allow the laying of cables under one of their railway lines in the area. The wind farm has been in the works since 2010, when 22 landowners were approached. Although 84 people and organisations have objected to the original Yellow River wind farm plans, with locals yet again seeking a judicial review through local fundraising events. The number of people seeking asylum in Ireland has increased by more than 1/3 in the first 6 months of this year compared to 2018, a period where number reached a 10-year high. The Department of Justice is concerned that 41% of asylum claims are from countries that are classified as safe. The department also added that those seeking international protection should be fleeing their homes in desperate circumstances. So far this year, some 2,234 new claims for asylum have been made, up 36% up on the same period last year. Sure, why wouldn't they come if they're going to get plenty of free stuff? The mechanisms that allow this need to be changed, and those responsible for not doing their job should be held accountable. In Macroom, County Cork, the Riverside Park Hotel is the latest property to be given a contract to accommodate those seeking international protection, with 2 coach loads arriving last Thursday. With the hotel closing for renovations after a change of ownership, a contract was awarded without any consultation with the local community. This seems to follow a pattern where you have a closure for renovations, a change of ownership, and then people arrive. You have to wonder, are people within the business communities getting tipped off by members of the government to profiteer from this human trafficking business? A report in the Sunday Times last week stated that it is costing an extra €3.5 million per month for emergency accommodation, and they still complain and draw comparisons to prison because of curfews and magnet laundries, which is an insult to those who suffered in the religious-run institutions. With the ongoing battle for Barrow Street entering its 5th week, Monday started with an appalling interview with Hazel Chew by Pencil Neck Tubridy. 27 minutes of pure garbage, all about racism and the rising far right, and that there is no place for that in progressive Rainbow Ireland. Nazi salutes and ongoing hate. This propaganda at taxpayers' expense. Funny she forgot to mention that it's okay to be part of a baying crowd shouting Nazi scum off our street, with some of those in the unicorns giving Nazi salutes themselves, and that an orchestrated plant giving a Nazi salute was staged for the benefit of changing the narrative, and forgot to mention that screenshots taken and passed off as Nazi salutes were actually patriots waving goodbye as the unicorns departed. Miriam O'Callaghan also had a 10-minute segment later on in the morning. The afternoon didn't get any better, with Garda giving Gemma notice. I attended on Tuesday and met a couple of my subscribers, and I gave a small contribution on my belief that climate change is a scam and the greatest transfer of wealth from poor to rich. I dropped off one of my subscribers to Abbey Street and saw the enormous poster on Liberty Hall saying no to racism on public transport. You really have to ask yourself, are only Irish racist? All this is going to be in play is to place all this is going to do is to place special status on a segment in the community and put them above criticism. Look at the footage of the guard getting kicked in the head. Will any of the 5 arrested be charged? I was there again on Thursday, which turned out to be a silent protest, and met more of my subscribers, and I shall be heading back in there later on this evening. Well, there are a couple of thoughts which are my own. Thanks for listening. Good afternoon and good luck.